Welcome to today's episode of The Irresistible Factor. I'm really happy today because I have someone in a category that I love so deeply, and with a brand that I love also. So I want to welcome Julie Cartwright, who is the president of Pvolve, which is a fitness company that I can't wait to talk more about. Welcome to the podcast, Julie.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, so why don't you, I'm sure that there are many people that know about Pvolve, but there are some that don't. So why don't you just talk a little bit about Pvolve and then also your background? How did you get involved?
Yeah, great. So Pvolve is actually defined as functional movement and resistance-based equipment together. And that's like a really important aspect because when functional movement, which is basically movements that mimic and support your everyday activities, your everyday movements, when it's paired with resistance-based equipment, it really can unlock some pretty amazing results, everything from improved flexibility to mobility, hormone relief for the many things that we go through as women, in addition to a lifted butt, really great, toned thighs, a really strong core, and all the things that you would come to expect with a fitness method. So that's what the method is. Pvolve is an omni-channel. So we have everything from a digital subscription to patented pieces of resistance equipment that go along with the digital subscription. And then we also have a really growing footprint of brick and mortar four-wall locations. So we've awarded around, I think, 49 to date, and we have about 10 open. So that is what Pvolve is. I started the company with the founder back in 2017. And really, I had no intention of really joining a company. I was very happily employed at Lionsgate at the time, but it really was the founder's story, Rachel Katzman, that you couldn't say no to. And I don't know if that really answered your question,
Well, I
Chris.
want to know how you guys how did you guys get connected? Because you said
Yeah,
Lionsgate, which is clearly not a fitness or wellness company.
yeah.
So what were you doing there and what made you decide to make the leap?
Yeah, so for 18 years, I worked for a home entertainment company called Anchor Bay Entertainment. We were owned by Stars, and then we were later bought by Lionsgate. So I not only ran the entire home entertainment, what a home entertainment is it's really DVDs and VHS, and then it became digital later on. That's how long I was basically in the industry. But in addition to movies and theatrical movies and everything that I was marketing and putting together from a product development standpoint and selling to big box retail, I also was the general manager of our fitness division. So I worked on everything from Tracy Anderson to Billy Blanks to Weight Watchers to Crunch. And really, I was helping to develop content and then package it on DVD and VHS and then sell it to big box retail. So that's really like was my passion. I loved to run that side of the business. And because the industry is somewhat small, it really is in fitness. Rachel Katzman, who had really found functional movement and it had changed her life. And we can kind of talk about that because it's a really powerful story that you cannot say no to. She, through a mutual friend, kept saying, okay, if you want to start this company, you've got to meet Julie Cartwright. And she tried to get in touch with me for probably like 8 months. And finally she beat me down. And I met her in January of 2017 and she told me what she wanted to do. And I said, okay, I'll help you. And did it as like a side hustle for like a year. And then,
Wow.
yeah,
So that's a big shift for you. I mean, you and I want to hear about your story as well as her story, but you made a big shift. You went to something that was very, you know, I don't want to say unstable because I don't know if that's the right word, but you went to something where you literally didn't know what the outcome was going to be, and you were going to be, you suddenly became I almost sounds like an accidental entrepreneur in a way.
yes, definitely. I mean, I think that when I was sitting across from her, the company had just been bought by Lionsgate, and you kind of feel like you've arrived, it's just like,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, I'm running home entertainment for Lionsgate. And there's like a prestige about that.
Yes.
And yet, I think that when I'm very emotionally connected to certain people and obviously certain things. And I think that when she started to talk about like a new way of moving her body, she had this appreciation at 23 years old that, oh, wow, I don't have to power through pain in order to get the look that I'm looking for, that actually waking up and not being in pain, she had scoliosis, is really so powerful. And I heard that in that moment. And I was 40 years old, and, I had 2 kids. My husband had just had shoulder surgery, and he had shoulder surgery because of the way that he moved his body in order to stay fit, that did
Ugh,
not support like a health span. And so I'm just like the type of person that when I hear something that I just can't, um, that I get really super excited about, I just want to be a part of it. And so I definitely didn't leave Lionsgate at that point. I stayed on for an entire year working myself to the bone.
I was gonna say that
And
must have been really hard.
it was crazy traveling every single week out there, and then working, on this startup on the weekends and nights. But I realized that I was falling in love with the work there and falling out of love with the other work. And you have all of these milestones when you're starting a company. You really do. It's just like, oh my God, I found somebody to start our streaming service. And wow, I found somebody to do our logo. That's my neighbor for $5,000, and so it just I sort of identified the type of company that I'm, or the type of size of company that I'm really good at, and it was just a perfect fit. So by the end of the year, it was a no-brainer. They wanted to
That's
start the
amazing.
company, and they wanted me to come on full time, and I was ready to leave.
That's very cool. And I'm sure that you don't regret it because it's an incredible thing that you're doing. And I wanted you to talk a little bit more about what you said because it's so crazy to me, and we all do it. So many people who are injured and getting surgeries and going to physical therapy and chiropractors, it's because we're trying to be fit. It's not because
Yeah,
we're tripping and falling or because something terrible has happened. It's because we're actually trying to be healthier. It doesn't make any sense.
it doesn't make any sense. And I think that I honestly think as consumers, we're becoming a lot wiser to the things that we're doing today that won't necessarily support the way that we want to live in the future. And COVID probably accelerated that, this idea that you want to get educated in order to live not just long, because we're living longer, but you want to live better. You've
Yeah.
watched your parents age, they may not have had the information that they needed in order to avoid the way that their body is unable to move in their 70s and 80s, and we don't want to do that. So I think it's something that's incredibly relevant, that's not going away. Is just this idea of supporting health span. It's crazy to me though, Christy. It really is. Like when I see somebody, and there's so many stories from our members that are like, I can't do that anymore. That thing that I loved because I just did too much damage to my body.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
So
I think we all do it. I think when you hear it, it's hard to believe it almost that you could actually do the things you need to do to be fit and look the way you want to look and not be hurting all the time. And I think that's a really interesting thing to talk about. So tell me about the beginning of the company and the story. And then I have a million more questions for you about how you guys are doing now, but let's start there.
yeah. So I mean, really the story started with her story, her own personal journey of really looking for a workout that was going to get her the physical look that she was looking for, which we definitely deliver on, but also just this idea that, wow, I should care about how I feel. And the reason that I say that is because then we started a streaming service that year. We actually launched the company in November of 2017. So it took us around, 10 to 11 months of gosh, the most craziest amount of work. And we launched it with a proprietary patented piece of resistance equipment on an e-commerce site that we could serve a global audience. And we had a really small studio in Chinatown, very small. It was actually a room, like a room, but we had quite a nice clientele. And, so that was really how we started, but we're obsessed with listening to the customer. So everything from NPS scores to reading chats. I read the chats every day to we interview a consumer, one of our members in front of the entire company every Wednesday. And what we found was everyone had a thread of consistency to Rachel's story. It was crazy. It was all about, wow, yes, I'm doing this. It doesn't hurt me, but my balance is improving. You know what? I noticed the other day, I was like walking in wedges on cobblestones and I didn't fall. I have better posture. I'm waking up with less pain. And it just was so consistent that we really leaned in on that. We really felt like, wow, we've got something. And we had the fortunate opportunity to start to partner with doctors and our highly certified trainers and really like understand why there was so many profound results that people were getting. So we developed a board of doctors. We've got 4 doctors that sit on our board that do everything from work with our trainers on new moves to run our clinical research. And the clinical research is a whole other avenue of us in terms of we know that it works, but we wanted to prove that it worked in terms of reducing pain and improving the way that you age and your health span. So that's all been proven out through our clinical studies. So that's really like what our why is, is like why we're here is just you can have your cake and eat it too. And you should care more about how you feel because it will really impact the way that you're able to move a decade from now and 2 decades from now. So
Yeah. I mean, we're so used to beating ourselves up in every single way, right?
yeah,
Literally and figuratively, that it's just a thing that I think that people just do and they think it's the way you're supposed to feel. But I think one of the most interesting things I want to come back to the consumer part because I think it's amazing that you guys talk to people every week in front of your whole team. That's
yeah,
brilliant. I
yeah,
think everyone should do that. But I want to go back to, so when Rachel started the company, you said she was 23.
yeah,
So that's interesting because this feels like something that's relevant to me now because I've been doing this working out for so long and I'm so achy. But at 23, I wasn't thinking about that at all. I was just going, going, going. So can you talk a little bit about what happened with her and how she even got to be 23 years old and starting a company like this where you're talking about functional movement, which people don't generally talk about until later?
yeah. So she is the daughter of a really successful entrepreneur, David Katzman. And so her and her 2 brothers were always sitting around the kitchen table, really talking about the businesses that they were going to build in the future. So I think she just had that mindset. She's wicked smart too. But I think the combination of her looking for a physical like result, but also having scoliosis and not really paying attention to that aspect of it and being in constant pain. She was just really aware of finally feeling good. And she's the type of person that like identifies right there, like, wow, more people need to know about this, more people need to do this. These results are going to become more and more important, and I need to be able to bring that to people. She also knew that she needed a differentiated model. She knew that she needed more than just content. So I'm really lucky that she has sort of that mindset, and I'm more of the operator. Like I operate the business under that vision because I so believe in it.
That's
So
incredible. So talk about the launch. So you launched, I mean, I guess if you think about timing, your timing was pretty good, right? You launched going into COVID where people were home and stuck and didn't know what to do. Did that help you build the business faster?
well, what helped us is that we really launched the company in November of 2017, and we launched it really digitally native. So we already had the sophistication of having an at-home, digital platform and digital subscription and portable pieces of equipment that could fit into, quite frankly, any space. And I think that we knew very early on, as a matter of end of 2018, we knew that we didn't want to just build a digital community, that we really felt strongly about a franchising model, like to have owner operators and to have an in real life community to support you when you need it. And so we started that, but we really didn't even open our first franchise until 2021. So I don't know, the stars all aligned because we
Mhm.
were trying to scramble, trying to figure out how to build a digital platform in March of 2020 when the world shut down.
Yeah.
That's who we were, and we
Yeah.
were just getting started on our brick and mortar side of our business. So I would say that I do think it's a lot of it was really good timing. I think we were a bit progressive, to be honest,
Yeah,
Christy,
definitely.
early on with some of the things that we were doing. We were talking about pelvic floor, we were talking about
Yes.
longevity,
Yes.
we were talking, about hormones and women's health and that part of it. And like even getting into some of the clinical studies, if we got into a clinical study about healthy aging like 2.5 years ago
Yeah.
when nobody was talking about
Yep.
longevity. So
Yep.
I don't know, maybe we had like a little bit of luck on our side for sure.
So you've had a couple of really big, I mean, I think there's some big
Yes.
things that have happened to you guys, and you have this relationship with Jennifer Aniston, which if you want to talk about that, that would be good. And then I want to talk about the challenges, because even though you have all these incredible things going for you, it's still a business, and there are still ups and downs. And I'd love to hear about some of those, but let's talk a little bit about how exciting that must have been for you guys.
Oh my gosh, I'm still pitching myself, and so is Rachel. So we ended up getting a call from Jennifer Aniston's team. Literally, I was on a golf course on a Thursday night. I remember who I was with, like everything, just saying, hey, we're Jennifer Aniston's management team. Would you take a call with us on Monday? This was August of 2022. And we're all calling each other. We're just like, we're getting pumped for sure. Like, who's playing this like mean joke on
I
us?
was going to say, did you believe them?
No, 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 no.
No.
We were going down a rabbit hole, like investigating who they were, and it just like everything was like sort of panning out. Like it was like they might be just who they say that they are. And one thing that we did know that Jen had asked to be trained by one of our trainers in the Los Angeles area. We were keeping that very quiet for a couple of months. So we knew she like worked out with us, but she also did other things. So we didn't really think that much of it. And then we took the call on Monday, and it was sort of like, have you thought about having somebody like Jennifer Aniston, join the company? And
Oh my
it's just like
God.
that
Dream.
moment. It's so surreal. It's
Wow.
so surreal. And I'm just like, I don't even know that we dreamed that big. Like, are you kidding? And then we just, we ended up figuring out a really amazing partnership and then launching it publicly in June of 2023. And to say that it's been like a game changer is actually
Yeah.
underestimating its impact, to be honest. She trains with us multiple times a week. She is obsessed with the method, and she'll say that too, like publicly. But the thing is that she doesn't just put her name on things. She only
Right.
joins companies that she's obsessed with. And one of the things that she said, which I don't think she would mind me saying, is that when she first talked to Rachel and I, she's like, where have you guys been? Like, where have you been? I am going to use a megaphone to make sure that people know about this. And that's exactly what she's done, because it's very hard and it takes a lot of money to educate people on a new way to move.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so and it happened all at the right time, because that's right when we were starting to open up our first franchise. And, so it's like rising tides were sort of like lifting all boats.
Yeah.
It's magical. And so you're going to be hearing a lot more from her this year.
I'm excited to hear that. And also I'm wondering, is it enough? Or do you still need to do all the things and worry about all the things that other entrepreneurs worry about?
Yes. And I think going back to like the mistakes that we've made, the challenges, I mean, there's so many mistakes that I made. I am in 18 years in my former, career, I'm not nearly as good as I am today in the last
Mhm.
7 years, because those mistakes that you make, you're not going to make them again, but they're so valuable in terms of, so that's everything from hiring too quick, and having to let go of like really, really good people, because it maybe wasn't something that we need, or the overall revenue is not supporting that any longer. So going too quick, I think, is a problem, and also slowing down too much. I think we decided to put some like rigor and process into the business, and at a certain size, um, you can't take speed for granted. Like you can't slow yourself too far down. You can't not be able to pivot. And
Yeah.
then there's some, I think we got like a little ambitious, and we probably took on too much and sort of lost sight of what we really needed to focus on. And that was the method
Hmm.
and resistance equipment together, and what that could really deliver. And so those were some lessons that we learned, maybe spending too much on top line, marketing. So
Yeah.
those were the lessons that we learned very early on, but we're a much better company today but challenges still exist. I mean, we're starting a franchise business. We only have 7 of our franchise locations open, a total of 10 studios open, and we're opening 2 a month. And that is a ever-changing learning lesson. No matter how good you are, and like how great our brand is, you still have to be listening to these franchise owners because they're maybe opening up in the suburbs and we have all of our locations in urban markets, and what are they experiencing that's a little bit more of a challenge. So we have I'm challenged every day. Yes.
What do you feel like the biggest challenge going forward for you guys is going to be? I mean, you've had a lot of great things happen. You've grown the business, sounds like in a really smart way, and learned some things along the way. And now you've got this incredible partner. But what are the challenges you still sort of see ahead of you?
Yeah, I think even with the power of Jennifer Aniston, I still do think that there is an adoption around low impact functional movement and education that has to take place. Also, I think, and I've been asked this by franchise owners that are coming through our like discovery days, because that exact question, what do you think is the biggest challenge? And the thing is that functional movement and resistance-based training can do so much for you. Like it can. But Christy, like to a certain degree, I can like overwhelm you with all that it can do. It can help
Yeah,
you menopause, and it can
yeah,
rehabilitate you after injury and stuff. And so it's this idea of creating consistency and simplicity
yeah,
in what it
yeah.
is that we're offering, and when to introduce the other things, because I might think you care about balance, but you don't really care about balance until you notice that it's improved or that you've lost it.
Exactly, exactly, exactly,
So
exactly. I mean, and I think the things that we already know, working really hard, lifting heavier weights, running further, all the things that are obvious and long-standing fitness things, those are the things that are actually hurting people. And we don't, I think that there are a lot of people that don't believe
yes.
that you could do what you're saying
Yep.
without, yeah. And that's probably one of the hardest things for you guys to sort of overcome, I would imagine anyway.
It is, but I'll tell you that our model has always involved in real life experience, like these franchise locations. And we really fundamentally believe that once we're at 25 or 50 in market,
Yeah.
that because of that high touch experience of studio, that was going to help us to be less reliant on, paid marketing,
Yes.
perhaps like really
Yeah.
expensive, but you have like 2 seconds to, you have a much longer form
Yeah.
opportunity with these
Educate. Yeah.
investors.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a great time for us in terms of, really being able to build that side of the business.
Yeah. And so you have a few open now, and what's your goal?
So our goal, I mean, we've awarded 49 locations to date, and we'll award probably another 40 this year. But we're a little different than your traditional just franchising boutique studio because we're trying to build a world-class brand around functional movement and resistance-based training. So that's not the only part of our business. We have a really thriving D2C business too. And so I don't think we're in this situation where it's like, we've got to sell 1,000, we
Mhm.
want to find right owner operators. We want to support our owner operators for a long-term, really strong experience in real life so that it supports, like we feel this one plus one equals actually three with digital members and, in studio members, because I think you're one of three things. I think you're either a digital member at home. I think you're either a studio member or you do both. Like, we're not going to pull you away from being a studio member by just taking you to a digital at home. So I don't think it's competitive. I think it's additive.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know if that was the answer to your question. Now
No, no, I think that's really interesting. And I think that I'm curious because, during COVID, no one was going to gyms. And then it seemed like no one was ever going to go back to gyms because why
yeah,
would when you could get so many things at home, but it's not the same. I mean, I don't even think it's the same. And I really do work out a lot at home. But I don't think that it's the same because you do things wrong. You don't, I mean, you just
yeah,
aren't, you're not a teacher or trained in the way to make sure that you're doing all the right things. So I think it's interesting. And of course, people are going back to gyms now. People want to be together. So
yeah.
I think it's interesting. And there's so many offerings though. How do you deal with that? Like, I mean, I've seen two Rumbles open in the past 2 weeks that within 10 miles of each other. And, there's stretch labs that are opening, which I think is an interesting concept.
Yeah.
And how do you get people to pay attention to you guys?
Yeah, so I do think we are sort of a standout, like a category of one at
Yes.
the moment. You can't just go down the street and find another functional
No,
movement
you
that
cannot.
has the like the clinical backing that we do, and resistance based. Nobody else is doing it the way that we're doing it right now. So I think that that's like part of the standout of our business model. But we're looking to protect our franchise owners at the moment. We're not looking to stick one right next to another, and learning from the industry, like learning from some mistakes that I think some other franchise owners, I mean, franchisors have made.
Mhm.
So I think the fact that we don't have people that are copycatting us right now, because it would take a lot, because
Yeah.
of mainly because of our clinical efficacy, and the training of our trainers is pretty top notch. But also our business model, I think our business model is pretty attractive, because really we try and create in studio members with value. So if we've got digital members in that market, that helps us to identify that that market has demand. We feed that into our location, Buxton mapping. And then, we're trying to sort of say like, hey, there's a studio in your market. We're hoping that they become studio members and hybrid members at that. And that's our growing cohort, is really these
Yes.
people that are doing both. And that's what supports like sort of long-term retention, is this idea that you can practice the fitness method that is delivering results for you no matter what's going on in your life. So, I think the way that that's structured for the franchise owner is very favorable, and that's intentional.
Do most people who come to you guys give up all their other forms of exercise and or
No,
no? No.
no. So our founder, if you listen to her, she only does Pvolve, and she does it 6 days a week. And
Mhm.
so there are those, like
Yes.
truists, or whatever that is. But actually, I think that functional movement actually supports the other things that you
Yeah.
love to do,
Yeah.
whether it's a sport, which definitely there's a lot of benefit to practicing functional movement in running, in pickleball, like just to avoid injury and to support the muscles that are supporting the larger muscles that are being overly used in those things. But
Yes.
also, certainly there's people that still do like Orange Theory and us, or they do other forms of low impact. We don't expect you to stop what you love doing. We just expect you to, if you want to continue to do that, you probably need to add us in.
Yeah, interesting. I want to talk about what you said about the consumers that you talk to every week, because I think I honestly think that's one of the most valuable things. And that's one of the things I talk about the most when I'm working with brands, is really understanding consumer insights and trying to tap into those things. And I think a lot of people don't think about that as much as they could. But it sounds like you guys are really committed to that. So can you talk about what you're doing on that front? Because that's so valuable, so valuable.
I'll tell you, I think we started it a little bit selfishly, because these member stories are so inspiring. They're
Mhm.
inspiring, and we started them right when I think COVID, well, the weekly interviews, we've always been listening to the customer in every other channel that we could possibly listen to. I personally reach out to members that write in for reviews, oftentimes like every single week. It's just like, oh my God, that's the customer. Like
Yeah.
nobody knows more than the customer knows. But we started these interviews really around that time, because I wanted to inspire what was now a really, like, we weren't in person any longer. We were
Yeah.
virtual, and I was trying to figure out ways. And little did I know, that wow, we were going to be finding out so much, and then again, we were going to thread that consistency of what all of these members say. Old, young, suburban, urban, men, women, like it is consistent. We actually record them for people that, for our internal team members that can't listen, and we often reflect about them, and like later on, and we'll use them as an example. So it's awesome, because we use different team members to interview them, and so we've got a different perspective on the questions that we're asking. We learned so much. We've made decisions internally that really, um, are addressing some of the things that they either love, or some of the things that they're just like, okay, I was confused as to this, and then we dig in deeper. So it's 15 minutes every single Wednesday, and it's all of our favorite time of the week. It's
Yeah, I
awesome.
bet. I bet. I mean, because you're not hearing complaints, you're hearing about how you're improving lives. I mean, that's a big deal and must
Yeah,
be really rewarding. Um,
we
what do you,
cry.
what
I
was
mean,
that?
we cry,
You cry?
we
Yeah, I'm
cry, we
sure.
laugh.
I'm
Yeah,
sure. I'm sure.
yeah.
And what do you do? Like, are you collecting all of those stories and then using them to develop new tools or new ways of communicating?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say necessarily like we're definitely collecting insights from
Yeah.
those interviews. I think the places that we're really collecting feedback that we're sorting into macro issues is CX tickets, which we go through as a leadership group, CX tickets, NPS scores, app reviews, feedback sentiment on our, social channels. All of these things are looked at, and we're identifying the macro, perhaps like challenges, but also these moments of like, hey, everyone is saying this, so this is something that everyone is caring about, and we might lean in further on that particular point. um, and then we survey our members. We do all sorts of things because and we use that. Not only does our head of product then say like, okay, I want to reach out and I want to dig in more with Christy and find out like why she churned out after being an active member for a year. Well, it was her app and she had this problem and we were able to fix it. So it's like the ethos of this company, and I'm really, really proud of it, but we all feel the same way about it.
That's amazing. And how do you, it sounds so personal in a way, like it's a brand, but also it sounds like there's a lot of one-on-one communication with your customers. And I wonder how, as you grow, what's your plan for kind of hanging on to that? Because I think that's part of probably what makes you guys so successful. People feel heard and seen and
Yeah.
um, taken care of.
Yeah, I think that goes into why we started franchising though too. I
Mhm.
think that we really, and in our like monthlies with our franchise owners, where we're training them on various aspects of the company, we always talk about that point and that importance at the studio level, especially for these owners, to really get to know their members, to really listen to them, engage with them, follow up on their feedback. And so I think that's one way, because we certainly feel like that's very scalable, in
Mhm.
definitely the next several years. But even if I can't talk to every member like I used to back in 2017, I think that it's such a huge part of our week, and we do it through multiple channels. So I can't see it going away, and hopefully as we scale, we even get more resources that they know that that's a core value of ours, and it's just something that we continue to really focus on.
So exciting. You have so many great things going on. And I want to be respectful of your time, but I want to ask you one more thing. I always ask at the end of an interview if you could think about your journey and the things that you learned along the way and share some of your advice with, maybe a couple of things that you've learned that you were like, you have to think about this because this will happen if you don't, or anything that's useful for entrepreneurs who are listening.
Yeah, I think this one will come as a surprise, really, but I am a person who's like, I always take the meeting. And I think certain people are just like, you know what? I don't have time if they don't come with an agenda, if they don't like. I have found in my life, and I've had a beautiful career for the past 28 years. I'm 48 years old. Like, is that like relationships and your ability to help others, because they will come back and help you, and taking the meeting because they may not. It's just, that is the connection. It's how I got to Pvolve. It's how we've been able to figure things out. Like, seriously, my neighbor developing our logo. It's just,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's a really, I make the time
I
for.
think I will tell you that it is a surprise. And you said I don't think this will be a surprise, but it is because I think that people get so busy and overwhelmed. And then also there are other factors like I'm a founder. I don't need to talk to everybody. Someone else can talk to them, but
Yeah.
there's really anyone else. We all know that. And also I think you're right. I feel the same way. It's like just opening yourself up to there might be some reason for this interaction that I
Yeah,
don't see yet. Yeah,
yeah,
I think, but I don't think that's as common as you might think. I think that's a really good piece of advice.
yeah, yeah. No, I've been really lucky.
Well, it's not just luck though, it's being open. I mean,
Yeah,
yes, there's luck, but there's also an openness about it because a lot of people have a lot of great things going on and they just can't see, like they want to know the reason for all the things. And sometimes you don't know when you're bumping into something that there's a reason yet.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I think that's really
definitely.
cool. Have happened that you just think have changed the way your trajectory or the way you've gone forward?
You know, I really, I am a decision maker. I really am, and I think that's always been a good thing is that I trust my gut. I trust my head, you know, and I'm not afraid to make a decision. I'm not afraid to show up like authentically in front of the entire organization. That is one thing that I think has helped to really gain trust with our franchise owners. It's hard on a new emerging franchise
Yes.
concept, but I show up so authentically, like I mean, crying in front of like my company over things that are going on in the world or things that are going on just with us in the company. And I've never, you know, wanted to change who I was because that was the persona I was supposed to fit into. And I think that that gains a lot of trust. Um,
Yes.
and I'm grateful for that for
Yeah.
sure. Um,
So being vulnerable and yeah, just you don't know everything. You don't know.
oh, and I'm not afraid not to be the smartest person in the room. As a matter of fact, most times I'm not, and that's the thing. So yeah, it's been I've been really blessed. A lot of gratitude for
I
what
am so, well, I'm grateful that we got connected and I really appreciate all your time and sharing this incredible story. And I am definitely going to watch out and see what happens to you guys because I feel like you're on the verge of something really big. I think once people start to believe they don't have to be hurt all the time, I mean,
yeah,
where else are they going to go? There isn't
yeah,
anywhere else to go right now.
totally. I
Yeah.
completely
Amazing.
agree.
Amazing. Anything else you want to share before we wrap?
Um, I mean, I don't think so. You know, it's been a wild ride. And,
Yeah.
you know, I think when I think about where we're at today, I'm really, really, really proud. I'm up for the challenge, but it's also like loving what you do is shows up in the world.
I think so too. And I think the other thing you said something really interesting when you said I started to fall in love with what I was doing at night and on the weekends and I fell out of love. And I think that's important to pay attention to also.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
our, we don't get that much time. We really don't. And so if you're really, really unhappy, or even if you're not really unhappy, if you're just kind of going through the motions, that's a sign, right?
yeah. There's so many people in my life,
Oh,
people that I love. As a matter of fact, there's one of my best friends. She cannot stand what she does.
me
Like,
too.
and I'm just like, oh my God, you can't stand what you do. Like, how does that work? You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I have some friends like that too. And I just sort of am like, well, why are you continuing to do it? And you do what you're doing sometimes because of momentum, because you don't know another way, or because you don't
Scared.
see
Yeah.
another yeah. Yes, yeah. But I think it's really important. And if you're an entrepreneur, if you don't love what you're doing, you are not going to make it. There's no
No,
way. It's too
you're
hard.
not gonna make it.
Yeah.
Nope, totally
Yeah.
agree.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's too
It's
hard.
too much. It's too much work. It really is. You have to pour yourself into it. I think that's the other thing. And I said, sorry, because this is like long-winded, but I was talking to somebody the other day and you know, your life should be filled with joy. It should. You have to have joy in your life. And I looked at that person and I said, I have so much joy in what it is that I do. I'm a mom of two, I'm a wife, I'm, you know, I'm all these other things that also bring me tons of joy. But like the fact that the bulk of my day,
Yes.
what I do for a living brings me joy, like
You're
thank
lucky.
you. Yeah,
Lucky. And you've obviously made great choices, but also that's an incredible gift.
yeah, it
Yeah.
is. It
That's
is.
so great. Well, that's a very inspiring thing to leave everyone with. So thank you so much.